Hello everyone, this is Carlos Huante. Creature Talk Part 2, Prometheus and Alien Covenant. In Creature Talk Part 1, I talked about the Deacon, the Neomorph, the Ultramorph, and the Beluga Head, also known as the Baby Head. In Creature Talk Part 2, I'm going to go over some stuff for the Deacon that I didn't get to go over in Creature Talk Part 1, and related references to the Goblin Shark and some of the larvae for the Deacon and the Neomorphs, um, and some ideas I had for the Deacon itself, which I didn't go over in Part 1. There will be a Part 3. I'm just going to let you know now. I'm not going to go over the engineers in this talk. There's going to have to be a Part 3 because the engineers alone would take up the entire episode here. So with that, let's get started. The Deacon. This is the first image I did of the Deacon. This and this next one. The idea being that it would obviously, as maybe not obvious to all of you, but the idea was that it came out of a man. That's why it doesn't have any of the biomechanical filigree. The idea for the Ultramorph was that it would come out of an engineer and would then have all that biomechanical filigree. This is a very primitive version of the xenomorph, and even more primitive than this was supposed to be the beluga head. The beluga head would be the very first version of an alien creature, in the line. So you'd have the beluga head, you'd have the Deacon, then you'd have the Ultramorph. The Neomorphs were an offshoot that were created by David, and this is what I understand. Okay, as you know, from my perspective and my position being close to the production. Okay, I know a lot of people can make up a lot of stuff, but so now that I've seen and worked on both films and understand where everything fit from when I was working on it and afterwards, things changed, right? You see the final picture while you're working on it. There's things that are still not worked out, and you're designing for the character to fit a certain position. Then you see it used in a different way. I mean, this happens to me, and this happened to me throughout my career, to be perfectly honest, where they take a design and all that you had intended for the character is thrown out, and they just take the design and put it somewhere else. You would not understand my frustration with this, of course, because it actually means now that the actual design is less successful. It doesn't fit as well, and then when they change it, now that means they're redesigning the character. So now it is no longer the character you designed, even though they try to keep the character there with the same name, like that thing that came out at the end, came out of the engineer in Prometheus. That was not the Deacon, in my opinion. That's something else. I don't know why they keep on calling it the Deacon, just because it's a cool name, but it is not the character. This character I invented. It wasn't in the script. I got to design this character, and Ridley named it the Deacon. But the character was intended to come out of a man, not an engineer. They they mushed this character around as I was working on it, but it went to becoming an engineer, then it left and came back to being the creature that would come out of a man. And you'll notice in the file names here as I show you, as I move through to image number 3 here. You can see I actually had a tail on him at one point. I didn't know if I didn't know if I liked the idea of him having a tail, because I thought it might be too close to a xenomorph, and I wanted this thing to feel like a primitive xenomorph, so it would not have the tail yet. Um, but this pose was inspired by the attack on Brett, that first alien when it's hanging in the rafters, curled up. Um, anyway, onward here. So you can see I labeled this ultramorph here, as they were advising me that he had to be bigger, and he had to be up to 8 feet tall. And I thought, you know, okay, so now he's going to be a giant. And I thought, okay, I guess as long as he gets in the film, but I hadn't worked out any of the rules yet at this point, because this is really at the very beginning. Uh, and almost immediately after this, I started writing and sketching while I was on the plane, and I had sketched out these two ideas here. This idea, and I showed it to Ridley, and I went back to um, the idea of him being the size, just a little bit taller than a man, which would be about 7 feet tall. You know, um, so more along the lines of a xenomorph rather than an ultramorph, which would destroy the idea of it being so clean. And this one has more filigree even than I would like. I would really want it to be this clean. Um, so, so the idea here is that it is essentially one step beyond a man in the world of becoming a xenomorph. So the Deacon is the very uh, on the scale from 0 to the left being a xenomorph, and to the right being human. It was still in the middle, but on the right to being a human, right? So uh, and that would be after this creature would tip over more and more over to the left, uh, past the 0 and becoming more of a xenomorph. Uh, so this primitive version, as I was saying, of a xenomorph would still have human elements to it, which would suggest the human was still in there, and I think would be pretty damn. I still think that this is a cool idea, and I wish we could go back in time and use this uh, to make it more of a horror film, right? Uh, Here are some more shots of me trying to, you know, the pull the jaw out to get this expression. Uh, there's something really wicked about this that I thought was pretty cool. And like I said, I still think it's pretty cool. But here is my idea for the mouth and the goblin shark reference that I was trying to sell them. That was, in my opinion, it wasn't used properly for Covenant with that neomorph that they had in the film. Um, I didn't like what they did when the mouth opened. I didn't like the animation on that head. I really didn't at all. And I'm not saying this again to rip on anyone's work. I've said this before. I'm a designer, and so I have an opinion. I have a very strong opinion, and it's just in reference to what I know about the character, and so I'm judging everything uh, from that perspective, and what I imagined for the character. So when I look at Covenant and I see the neomorph that they used, which is based on this Deacon, but they didn't understand the concept, and it got very bulbous, and they lost the clean look of this, which was based on that beluga whale. Based on my first impression of uh, the xenomorph that attacked the alien that attacked Brett in that first attack scene. Um, when they showed the profile of the head, that shot of the profile of the head, it looked like a dolphin whale creature to me. I didn't know it. I just thought it was beautiful. I was mesmerized. I was a 14-year-old kid. You know, I dragged every adult I knew in my family to go and see it, and I found aunts that would come and visit from Mexico, you know, who didn't understand English very well, and I would drag them to the theater with me uh, to go and see this movie. And you know, they were really they were nice enough to take me, even though they that wasn't something that they were into. They just liked hanging out with me, I guess. You know, I was lucky that way. So, you know, I so based on that first impression that the character looked like a whale, my immediate inspiration was a beluga whale because it's beautiful when they have shots of belugas swimming in that dark ocean. This white whale coming out of that dark um, water is absolutely it's ghostly, right? It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, right? So um, that was the theme that I was going for all of these characters. You know, starting with the beluga head and the baby head, and the deacon, and then the first ultramorph, and after that they would just go black, that black blue. Um, so, and it's a way to distinguish these primitive versions from what would become the xenomorph, right? So that character would stand alone. I didn't want to. I didn't want these characters to compete with that alien design. Um, you're kind of preserving what the alien is as a standalone, and these characters have to be cool in their own right, but they you don't want there to be a competition between them for people. You want people to be able to enjoy them for what they were, right? All as individual characters. Um, that's a really hard job, right? It's hard to design that. Uh, a lot of people approach design as just making something cool, and they add too much detail. They don't think about the design of the you know the simple first read of the character. They just go right into putting all kinds of stuff on it, you know, and you know, and it destroys. And they don't think about the story points either, you know, and how the character plays, not only in that particular movie, but also in the line, you know, in the grand scope, because we have a big story here that we're telling with this creature, uh, you know, that is just part of the entire story, right? So, but for this part, I wanted it to be, you know, really unique and interesting, and a very as a primitive version of the xenomorph. So, my idea for this character, based on the goblin shark now, okay, the jaw and palate, you know, that they would pivot and hinge right here at the bend of the jaw. So, uh, from here to the chin, both the palate and the mandible can fold up. Not all the way in, because I wanted to keep that grin. I didn't want to lose that. So it would go up just enough to give some sort of, you know, activity here to, uh, when you would see this character, you know, you'd get the feeling that this all moved, right? So it would come out just a little as it, you know, as it's coming up to a person, you would see it from here, from this point, rotate out. You know, pretty neat. And then after it rotates out, this can actually go forward and they can project its jaw and the palate, both. So it turn into this really wicked looking goblin creature type of, uh, you know, this kind of look, right? So my idea was that when it would do this on purpose to release this acid ball that it would coddle in the palate and the mandible. You know, it would coddle this and work it, and it would be dropping. So you know, this string of saliva here that you can barely see in this image, and it would be burning on the floor. And maybe that's the only thing that would be the tell that you could hear before it shot this thing at you, because it would be this golden ball of acid, and imagine like gold water swimming in a ball of oil, you know, somehow that it would be able to keep, retain that shape. Uh, and you would see this gold liquid floating around in there. That's what this would be. So the surface will be rotating in one way, and the inside will maybe static and look like it's actually rotating in the opposite direction. So they would be sliding over each other uh, in its mouth. If we had that shot, that would be pretty damn cool. So the idea was that it would shoot this stuff out of the dark. Someone would get half of their head, burned off immediately, right? In a flash. I mean, and there would be holes burnt off. You'd be standing there. You're a guy with your gun, hunting these things, trying to survive an attack by this creature, and part of the wall gets shot off right next to your head. And if there's a splash of that acid, some of it gets on you, and you start burning. You have burning spots on your arm or face. Would have been really horrific and scary as hell, right? So that was the idea. So that's the Goblin Shark reference here, and for the Deacon. So now let's go on to more when I went deeper with this reference for Covenant, thinking about David creating a neomorph based on this, because since we didn't use it for the Deacon, I wanted to try pushing it for Neomorph. And the Neomorph, these are now David's creations. And the Deacon coming out of a man, the Neomorphs are creations of David, right? So, in my thinking, right, at this time. So, this would be in David's kind of Hall of Horrors there that he would have on the Engineer planet after he killed all the life there and he started experimenting with his own version of life, right? He's the devil now and he's taken over paradise, this sociopathic creation of humanity, right? So you have this android there now creating these creatures, and I figured, okay, I'm going to try this. See, you'd have this fetus inside of the tank, this uh, this this goblin shark inspired creature, and it would escape at some point in the story, and this would be the newborn or the more grown, because it's already been born as a fetus in a tank. So a newborn is really not the right title for this character, but say it's say it is, and it's crawling, and it crawls very, very fast. It gets lost, and I'm sure it'd be very vulnerable at the stage, but it wouldn't last very long. It would grow within the day, and you'd have this creature. So here you can see more of the influence of that whole mouth structure from the goblin. Uh, it would hinge here, it's kind of a scissor, and this palate would get pushed in as this closed up in semi-flush structure here. Um, this was a neat character. I don't know if it worked well for the film, but I still like the character. Uh, I don't know if it was too much of a departure from the the alien look. I don't know if it's too creature-y and not subtle enough. But I still liked it, but maybe not for the film in the end. Uh, so here are some of the larvae for the neomorphs. And these spikes that are on the back here are inspired by a reference that really brought me of this trilobite that he found, I believe, in Morocco. Uh, they showed him a fossil out there that was really, really interesting. It had all these spikes coming off the back, and I mean, all over. It was really wild, and I don't have a picture of it. I may have it somewhere, but I haven't found it. Anyway, he sent it to me as this trilobite fossil, and I used it as reference, and I added all these spikes, uh, based on that reference that he sent me. Um, Again, here's some more ideas. This was actually a larva for an ultramorph, an idea that I don't think worked. I've shown it maybe a couple times. I don't really, I don't think it worked. But I do like the image, but I just don't think that idea worked as an ultramorph. I think the ultramorph should have been uh, really based off of Giger's image, the painting that he did, Necronomicon, um, which is what Ridley used for the big chap, the alien, in the first film. But in Giger's painting, it had those bug eyes, and I think that should have been the head for the Ultramorph. I really, really think that that should have been it. Um, and It's kind of late in the game now with the way that the story has been told. I think that there was a lot of missed opportunity in the evolution of the characters being done in a really interesting way. I'm not too sure where they're going now. Um, but Anyways, all that being said, to just say that I don't think that the idea that I had for the Ultramorph that would be come from this larva would work as well. So, but I do like this image just because I like the false or undeveloped eye here. That would stay that way when this thing matured, and you'd have this dome. Um, so this would never develop into an eye; it would just stay there underneath. Um, so, and this is the original that all these others came from, uh, that I had done for the Deacon or Beluga, the baby head. You could tell I gave this one a lot more attention. The others I was just scratching through really fast. Uh, Again, very inspired by that trilobite fossil that Ridley brought. Um, I really liked this idea a lot. I really wish we had gone there. They kind of went there with the things in Covenant, which I thought were pretty good. You know, the ones that were running around attacking them when they were on their way back to the ship that were born out of Ledward, and I don't know, the Hallett was his name in the script. I don't know what his name is in the movie. For some reason, I never got it. I've seen the movie more than a couple times, uh, but yeah. Anyway, and that is it for the uh, Neomorph and Deacon talk. So I'm going to go to the boards, uh, which will help me to describe some of the images and you to understand what I'm talking about when I start when I go over the flowers and the plants. So let's go to uh, these boards here. Okay, so these are the first boards I did related to Paradise when the crew lands, and I wanted it to be very idealistic or ideal, I should say, uh, in that it's beautiful, very colorful, saturated colors, uh, mounds of succulent type of plant things there. You know, they're not. It's not anything that you know because they're not flowers and they're not really succulents. There's something in between. The grass it would be like these tubular kind of almost cucumber shape. Uh, you know, I guess tubes is the way is these tubular kind of shapes there, as you can see here. So they wouldn't be grass blades; they would be grass tubes, and not unlike a nudibranch. But these things were not independent of the earth; they couldn't walk, but they were alive. So that was my idea for that. This life would be something that we just don't know. It would be something else. Uh, So here you see this would be Corinne and this would be Ledward. Ledward has actually pulled a flowering plant out of the ground and he's examining it. Uh, and here, out of what would be, I guess, the ovary of the flower, it would push out this uh, piece here where I guess you would call this the stigma of the flower, and it would shoot its pollen out um, at Ledward, and he would immediately react to this infection. Uh, and that was the idea. I wanted this to shock the hell out of everybody. Uh, and let's see. And the next, as as soon as he gets infected, I mean, he starts to change. I mean, violently and super fast. You don't have time to react. He starts to looking like a creature that is similar to that is reminiscent of the baby head, beluga head, and it doesn't stop. It keeps on going. Um, and it turns into this mound of creature stuff here. And you can see like all these little tubes of grass uh, type of stuff, whatever that is. I didn't have a name for it. That would be reacting to him as it moves away. And then in this third shot, it's kind of absorbed. He's kind of becoming part of the ground. And it's like they're welcoming him to this planet as he's being absorbed and turned into this mound of creature. Legs are growing out. Uh, his hands are becoming something like looks like the grass. His head is blown out, and it's like these large shapes that look like the grass. The idea was though that he would become instead of white, he would actually go black, and like the black goo, right? And 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 not unlike what they did with the engineers when they were killed by the black goo in Covenant, right? By David in that one scene, and then afterwards when we see the crew running past it, led by David through that area where you see in that open area uh, all the dead uh, people, and so that was the idea for this. Um, and it would be a violent attack, and I'll explain why this one would go so fast and bad um, when I go to these the second boards here of more closely related to the actual film now. But this wasn't used either because it wouldn't work, and I'll tell you why. Uh, Here, Ledward examines this flower. He opens it up. As he opens it up, it swells, and they're in a cove that is actually created by these long blades of grass type vegetation, and and these are flat grass blade type of shapes, not like what I was talking about, the cucumber shaped grass stuff, right? So, I mean, they're huge. They're and they create like a canopy and like a cave of vegetation that they walk into, and they discover it. They walk in there, and Ledward looks at. They're looking at all of the life in there. These beautiful flowers. He grabs one of them. He opens it up. As he does that, it reacts to him. It swells up, and it pushes out this rainbow of pollen, and not unlike a school of minnow, right? That are all glittery in the ocean when they, that tornado of minnow that you see a video of if you look it up, where the sharks are feeding, dolphin are feeding, everyone's feeding off of them, but they look like reflective little dots, in this violent tornado. I wanted something like that for this, and you can see how it glitters as it comes out here in this shot. And they're caught off guard and they're just looking around and watching this stuff move around them. And it would be a moment, of beauty, but it's deceiving because what they don't know, right? And as they're recording it, in this little gadget that I gave her, and it's beautiful, right? And this big moment with music, is getting louder. It's beautiful. It's Blade Runner movement, moment here with her eye and the glitter, uh, they don't realize that all these little creatures are what the glitter is, and they're swimming through the air, landing on their skin, and and they plant when what this pollen does, it's a creature, right? So I'm calling it pollen, but it's actually they're little creatures, and they land on the skin, and some can get, not all of them get to this point, right? Because they'll fall off. But this one I'm showing here, it releases the head into the skin, which will go into the bloodstream. Here's the pollen. So you would see this part would get released, and the body would just fall off, right? So this would go into the skin. And some of my thinking was that the more of these you get in your skin, the different the infection, or the more more exaggerated the infection, I guess you could say. So you'd have like what happened in Ledward in that first scene that I showed you, those first boards, where he just kept on changing, and it just wouldn't stop. You would imagine that he got a high dose of this. Uh, so so there you go. That is the different version of that first of this. There's one, and then this is another version, a little more cinematic. And so let's go to the next boards. Here is Hallett. When he would find it with another character, he goes out, another crew member. That crew member and Hallett are out, checking this area out that they've landed on, and this is David's planet, or the engineer planet. And he finds this group of eggplant-looking things here on the floor, and this is where they got the idea for those spores that were in the ground in the actual movie that they kept on stepping on that would release the metallic-looking spores, I guess, that would fly, and how they were very deliberate flying, and they went into his ear. And this one and then the guy that got it in the ship, or just as they were going into the ship, he got it in his nose. A lot of really dumb choices made for these people being called scientists in that movie. Going to alien planet without a helmet in Prometheus and Covenant. Unbelievable. Anyway, so this character walks up. This is Hallett, and he has his light in his hand. He connects it to his chest, and he's looking down at these eggplant-looking things here. And as he gets closer, one of them is reacting. The tongue starts to stick out. My idea was that this would not only react with the tongue sticking out, and then it would stand up, and its roots would act like legs, and it would get close to his mouth, to where now it's close enough to shoot this chameleon type of tongue and touch his mouth, and he's now been implanted with an egg. Obviously a creation of David already. So he doesn't think anything of it. They go on their walk, continue on, and he starts to feel funky. Hours later, then even later than that, it's already, his face is starting to swell, and it's getting pretty bad, and then his head explodes, and a creature comes out. And that would be, this is kind of what they used in the film, but with the long tails, I guess it worked pretty good. And I just didn't feel like, I actually didn't mind that part too much. I thought it worked pretty good. But what they were going to become in the line there, I mean, I could see, I guess when I look at those designs, I look at not just the immediate design, I'm looking at that as just a part of the whole picture, right? So what is that thing going to become? I'm looking at it, and it's running around on the floor with all fours, kind of galloping a little, running around, and it just didn't. I didn't like the way it felt. The animation wasn't interesting to me. It wasn't alien enough. There wasn't. It was something I understood, and I kind of shrugged my shoulders and go, so, you know, kind of. It was one of those kind of reactions that I had. Anyway, here's the leadwood boards, and they did use this pretty much uh, in the film. The only thing that they didn't use, where they just kept it a spike and it would explode, and then the neomorph came out of him and just fell out of his back. My idea was more of an emphasis on this thing, as it would relate to the xenomorph, in that I wanted it to be a tell, in that it would kind of, you would look at it and go, say to your, it looks kind of like the stacks that stick out of the back of an alien, you know, like the xenomorph, right, in the first film. It has a little stack sticking out. And that was the idea, that I wanted it to feel like this guy was, whatever happened to him was kind of trying to make him turn into one of those things without him turning into one, obviously, because he wasn't going to. But uh, something to that effect, anyway. So this thing it would go straight out, almost in a mechanical way, push its way straight out, right in front of her as she's staring at it. It wouldn't take any time, and it would be just this, 1, 2, 3, and it just stretches 4, 5. It's done. Then you think that you're looking at just this piece, but then you realize, no, there's this foreskin that just falls off, and you see that this spike is actually the back of the head of this creature, and it's there, kind of, forced into looking. All of its body is forced into a cylindrical shape that it was contained in. So the next shot would be, as it wakes up and it turns its head up and it screams, and he falls over. And as soon as this thing would fall out, from the time that it crawls off of the table and hits the ground, it's already grown 3 times its size. It's crawling towards her. It's releasing its umbilical, and it's already starting to walk. So by this shot here, we would see the shadow of the full-size xenomorph. Uh, I thought this would be very old movie kind of stuff here, and I think that this would be pretty cool. But it's just my idea. And there you go. That was, this was Ledward. There's the idiot pilot that killed everybody. Because of this one character, Corinne got killed, the ship got destroyed, and the rest of the crew that was there essentially got killed because they had no ship to get away on. And all the colonists were now going to get owned by David because of this one character. One unqualified person for the job. That's all it took. Okay, so those were the boards that I did for Covenant. And now let's go to, oops, I'm moving the wrong thing here, sorry. So there were 2 versions of Covenant. The first version I worked on in 2014. Then Fassbender had to go away and work on another picture. And in 2015, we restarted. It was literally a whole year later. So the first version, David had a dog that was named Bug, and he had these characters that were called minks. The minks were his army of, I don't know what they were used for because we didn't get that far into it, but it was his little army. And Bug was like his sentinel, and would be the first creature that the crew would meet when they landed on the engineer planet. So here are my ideas for bug and the minx, and then we'll get into the flora. So this is based on the Tasmanian wolf and Tasmanian animals in general because they have a really unique structure to their heads, and all together actually they're just really interesting looking animals. And so bug is based off of uh, those characters, those animals. With the complete with the stripes on the back, he would be hairless, uh, African dog ears, kind of, you know. Uh, very inspired by the Tasmanian devil with the head and neck here. And then we have this uh, bull terrier kind of head. I think they're also very interesting dogs. Um, they're just so weird looking that they measure up to the um, Tasmanian animal structure, their faces. There is just something really primitive looking about those animals in Tasmania. Um, so, okay, so here are the heads. This lasted all of about maybe half a week, and then this character was not a factor anymore. So my idea for the minx was also I had to make a choice in how anthropomorphic to go with the characters, um, and I debated that in this one page, as as I did, I learned more about the character, uh, you know, after doing this and thinking about all this, and I decided not to go anthropomorphic. But the idea of making them anthropomorphic was based on just cultures like Chinese, Japanese, South American Indians, and even early drawings in the West of animals that people weren't that familiar with. They always anthropomorphized the animals. Like the first drawings of gorillas, they look like they look like hairy men. So and all that stuff is pretty interesting to me, and I wondered if I should do that to add a creep factor, a layer of creepiness to these characters. But as I learned more, I decided not to because I wanted more of a contrast between the way they looked and their action. So, you wouldn't just play all your cards out and just say, oh, uh, and do the stereotypical, icon, which, everything that is bad is pointed, everything that is good is round and soft. I like contrasts. So I put this behind me and went more naturalistic for this character and used meerkats and prairie dogs as reference to come up with something uh, almost benign looking. So this one is based off of Pug with these goblin eyes though, and it was still too scary. I needed more, even though I needed to go here to see what it would look like, but I didn't like it. So I tried to go away from that, and then I experimented with the open mouth. That would be the threat of this character. Uh, but I still thought this looked a little bit too alien. I wanted them to feel more naturalistic. So I pushed back towards the animal uh, with elements that would be derivative of something that you know, but not necessarily anything that you've ever seen before on this type of an animal, anyways. So I added architectural lines that obviously shouldn't be there on anything that is uh, a living creature, right? To give a quality of it being artificial on the surface, right, with these lines and the very designed wrinkle lines. Even this little line under here uh, kept on pushing for the more naturalistic look, and I landed here. Yeah, these numbers don't match the order, by the way. So uh, this is just the way I sent them to Ridley. That's what these numbers are pertain to. Um, so I landed here. This is the one I stayed with. Uh, I left these lines in here to make it feel artificial, but at first glance you just see an animal, and then if you really get a better look at it, then you see all this kind of stuff. Those are the hits of the design. So first hit, it's an animal. Second hit, oh, look at the details. And you start to think that something is different. Why does it have this line? Um, this is just part of the, for the treasure seekers that you give to people. You give them levels to look at in the design. Um, so uh, here I'm experimenting with how this character would be scary, right, with the open mouth. The eyes would roll back, and I wondered if this was creepy enough. I mean, but because I guess just looking at one, you wouldn't think so, right? Uh, but if there's like 30 to 50 of these characters, and you encounter that, you're dead, right? It's not unlike a piranha. Just one piranha is, even though it's got all those teeth, it's not going to kill you. But 30 of them, you don't have a chance if you're in there too long. But I still decided to push this, and so I pushed it with thinking that, okay, what if each tooth was attached to its own individual finger type armature, and so it would come out like fingers each tooth, or they could stay in there and be like teeth, but then you would see the teeth reach out and grab you. Uh, that would be pretty neat. I think it would be, that's the sandbar for all you people that understand the surf talk. When the wave comes and it hits that sandbar, the wave just pops up even higher. This is that moment where you think that just the open mouth is it, and then no, it's going to keep on going further. It's got fingers attached to each tooth. So, and this was the final design for these characters. Uh, and at this point, I think this was it for this version, and then we left for a year and came back, and I'll show you that stuff here. Uh, so, I mean, this one helped me to establish how I would organize all these characters with the leaders, with these two. The leader here, right-hand character, and the rest of the minions. This one would probably be the one that was always close to David. And all of these would be communicated to from this one to this one to these. It would be like an army. Very cool. I really like this drawing. If I say so myself, I like this one. Yeah. So yeah, I just feel good about it. I liked it. Was successful. So uh, a good finish on that. So onward. So I showed you those boards when we had. Let's see. Let's go to these boards here real quick and do a recap and go through them all the way back up to the top. Here she is, and here's that this big flower here. We're going to go back, and here's that big flower, and here she is. So based on 1999, I was thinking that the landscape would be very alien in that respect, a little atmosphere. Here in this version, no longer this version. Now this version, still trying to bring some of this into this version a year later. I thought this could be pretty cool, right? This landscape of these giant flowers, and I'm trying to honestly, because all this stuff we went through really quickly. You're just throwing stuff out there, so I'm doing my best to try to remember the time frame, but I'm pretty sure I'm good on this. In that, well, anyway, we'll just move on. So, anyway, I'll just speak about the ideas. This idea was that, yeah, Space 1999, had an idealistic view of space, in Space 1999, which is kind of 1950s still, even though it was done in the 70s. Uh, Really, really cool, colorful alien planets that they would land on. Star Trek, the original series, did that as well. Um, and I wanted to bring some of that into this. Even though I know that everything's going to go gray, I still wanted there to be color on this planet. Uh, and I thought this in particular would be a pretty neat thing, where they walk into this grove of giant flowers. So let's go on. Here are the chrysanthemums as Ridley described them. I started this way with flowers. I didn't necessarily think that this was the way I was going to. After drawing this, I decided that I wanted to go in more the direction of succulents, uh, and not necessarily succulents, but a version of a succulent. So it's somewhere halfway between a flower and a succulent. It's something else. Still a chrysanthemum. And here are my experiments with the flower and how it would react to a host getting close, and it would kill itself to release these spores to infect its host. Um, this is my first drawing here, and here's another one. But these are too floral. I wanted it to be something else, but these are just for how it would. As I did these, I hadn't. I was still coming to what that idea would be after doing this drawing here, and I was working on other stuff, and I came back to this, and I just did these very quickly, and I like this idea, but I didn't want the flowers to be just flowers. I wanted it to be something else. This is too easy, uh, too default. So I started with the designs of these plants that look like flowers, and here they are. Um, I wanted them to feel natural, but also feel a little bit more than real in the way that they were organized. Um, my inspiration for all design actually, is Karl Blossfeld. So this is my chance to get to express a lot of that inspiration I've got from Karl Blossfeld photography. Uh, I love his stuff and have for my entire adult life. Huge inspiration for me for all my creature design, alien design work that I've done. Um, any design actually. I just love his work. So if you don't know him, look him up. Karl Blossfeld. uh, anyway, so here are my ideas for these plants. I wanted there to be organization and a strong order to the design of the stems and leaves, so they would feel almost artificial, to imply some sort of intelligence. That is uh, some sort of deliberate uh, design work being done here. Uh, Something artificial. These even look like hands. This area of the stem or the neck, whatever you want to call it, because these are plants, not flowers. Even though they have floral elements here, right? With this whole area. I guess they call it the anther and the filament, and they connect all the way into the. Now I'm not going to get into all that. Trying to remember everything. So that's with and without. Here I gave it these seeds that you saw in those boards when Ledward opened up that flower. And he turned it over and he opened it up and they released all that pollen that was all glittering. That's what these are here for. So versus this, I added that. In this plant, was the idea for this one was that this is the trigger. So this would react and it would cock back and shoot out the pollen like a gun. I mean, uh, right? This could have been pretty interesting. I mean, uh, I just like the idea of it being a gun, and shooting out. And, inspired a little by an episode in the old Star Trek series where they land on a planet and they find Eden, they think, and these flowers there. Anyway, there are these flowers there that shoot these darts out and kill one of the crew members, and then almost killed Spock. He stands in between Kirk and the flower, and I like that idea, and I thought that would be kind of interesting to play with. So that's what this is based on. Um, so I mean, it's not a flower. Some of and that was the thing, is that this there's something about the idea of it being not being a flower, but looking fanciful enough to be a flower, to be kind of hostile. There's something arrogant about this, and that was the idea. The order, the beauty. I don't know. A lot of it's trying to suggest quite a bit with this. Based on an orchid, but it's not a flower, it's a plant. Um, but very simple design. Something about it being so simple that it looks, uh, you're kind of afraid to get too close to this thing because you're not sure it's poisonous. Uh, this one with the disc of uh, roots, also with these stems or the neck that looks like hands. And so it's kind of a vampire looking plant. Um, Something cool there. So there it is. That was the flora and the fauna of Covenant. And then little added extras of the Neomorph and the larva. Um, so that's it for this talk. And part 3 should be coming out next week, early in the week, I hope. We'll see how it goes. I'm just learning how to do this stuff, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. And thanks for listening.